There is a loneliness that follows the rarest minds. It is not the loneliness of being unloved, it is the loneliness of being unseen. You can stand in a crowd, speak in clear language, share the same air as everyone else, and still feel like you are speaking from another dimension. Not because you are better, but because your way of seeing cuts through layers that most never dare to touch. Carl Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming so wholly yourself that you are no longer a product of the collective trance. And when you cross that threshold, you realize something sobering. Most people are not seeking truth. They are seeking comfort dressed as truth. They are not searching for clarity. They are searching for permission to stay asleep. If you have a mind like this, you will notice it early. Not in moments of triumph, but in moments of friction, when the world tells you to accept its answers and something in you refuses. When the crowd cheers for the obvious, and you hear only an echo of emptiness. When the conversation scratches the surface and you feel the weight of everything left unsaid, this is the first sign. You cannot unknow what you've seen. Once your mind has pierced the veil, whether through study, suffering, or sheer instinct, you cannot pretend you don't notice the lies people live in. You see the subtle manipulations in advertising. You see the ego games in polite conversation. You see how much of modern life is a theater of masks, where each actor pretends their costume is their skin. The second sign, you are not seduced by appearances. You know that charisma can hide a hollow core. That power can be the cloak of deep insecurity. That kindness can be a weapon for those who have mastered the art of disarming with a smile. You have trained your eyes to look past the glitter, to study the hands that hold it, to see whether they are steady or trembling. The third sign, you can hold paradox without shattering. The average mind demands certainty, black or white, good or evil, right or wrong. But you can stand in the tension between opposites and see how they feed each other. You understand that light casts shadows, that freedom requires discipline, that strength without vulnerability is brittle, and vulnerability without strength is chaos. You do not seek resolution as quickly as others, because you know that wisdom grows in the space between contradictions. This is why some find you unsettling. They expect alignment with their side, their belief, their war. But you do not live in their war. You live in the deeper reality beneath it, the one that makes their victories and losses look like pieces in a much larger game. The fourth sign, you are immune to most forms of manipulation. This immunity is not arrogance, it is awareness. You know the hooks people throw into conversation, the way they appeal to your ego, your fear, your desire to belong. You have watched these tactics work on others, and you have dismantled them in yourself. This makes you ungovernable in the eyes of those who thrive on control. The fifth sign, your solitude is not empty, it is charged. Where others see silence as a void to be filled, you see it as a forge. You return to it again and again, because it is where the noise of the world falls away and the architecture of your mind can expand without interruption. People who fear solitude think you are isolating yourself. They don't understand that you are building something in that quiet, something too delicate to survive constant exposure. The sixth sign, you see the systems inside the chaos. Whether it's in politics, art, relationships, or nature, your mind can trace the threads most people overlook. You see the way small events ripple into large ones, the way a single unspoken belief can guide decades of behavior, the way history repeats not because people don't know better, but because they don't want to know better. The seventh sign, you are willing to pay the price for truth. Most will not. They will compromise to keep their place in the tribe. They will bite their tongue to avoid unsettling the fragile order of their lives. You, on the other hand, have lost people, opportunities, even security, because you refused to betray what you saw. And while it hurt, you would do it again because the alternative is living as a ghost in your own story. The eighth sign, you know the mind itself is a tool, not a master. This is where you separate completely from the 99%. They believe their thoughts are who they are. You know they are not. You watch your thoughts as they rise. You test them. You choose which to act on and which to let dissolve. You understand that the mind is powerful, but without awareness, it becomes a tyrant ruling over a life it was meant to serve. And here is the truth that will set you apart forever. A mind like yours will never be fully understood, because it does not exist to be understood. It exists to see, to map the patterns others ignore, to notice the fractures in the mask, to hold the weight of complexity without needing to simplify it for the comfort of the crowd. This will make you lonely at times. It will make you dangerous to the systems that feed on ignorance. It will make you hard to love for those who only know how to love reflections of themselves. But it will also make you free. And in a world built on invisible chains, freedom is the rarest and most dangerous possession of all. Freedom changes the way you move through the world, not in grand cinematic gestures, but in subtle ways that most will never notice. You no longer rush to fill silences just to keep others comfortable. You no longer scramble to defend yourself against every misunderstanding. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth to anyone whose eyes cannot see past their own walls. You've learned the art of letting go, not out of apathy, but out of understanding. Understanding that people hear only what they are ready to hear. Understanding that some conversations are not worth having, not because you can't win them, but because the other person isn't looking for truth. They're looking for reinforcement of what they already believe. This is why your presence unsettles certain people before you even speak. They can feel that you are not playing the same game they are. They sense that their usual tactics, flattery, guilt, fear, slide off you like rain off stone. And without that leverage, they don't know how to place you in their mental map. To the few who resonate with you, however, you will feel like oxygen. Because when they meet you, they are meeting someone who sees without judgment, who listens without trying to fix, who challenges without trying to dominate. You create a space where their mind can stretch without fear of being broken. Jung understood this rare connection well. He called it the meeting of two wholes, not two halves. And that's the paradox of having a mind 99% of people will never comprehend. You are whole enough to walk alone, but deep enough to connect without losing yourself. And this wholeness changes the currency of your life. You stop trading time for approval. You stop trading authenticity for belonging. You stop trading vision for temporary comfort. Instead, you move with a quiet clarity. You know what you value, and you know what it costs. You are willing to pay the price for the life that aligns with your truth, whether that price is solitude, misunderstanding, or the loss of certain doors that were never worth walking through in the first place. This doesn't make you unfeeling. In fact, it makes you more alive, because without the constant drain of pretending, you have more energy to create, to build, to explore, to love on your own terms. You become both sharper and softer, sharp enough to cut through illusion, soft enough to hold what is real. But here is the reality you must accept. Most people will not follow you here. They will watch from the safety of the crowd, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with envy, sometimes with suspicion. They will wonder how you can live without the scaffolding they've relied on all their lives. They will invent stories about you to explain away what they can't understand. Let them, because your mind was never meant to be caged by their comprehension. It was meant to keep seeing, keep questioning, keep breaking the invisible ceilings the rest of the world pretends aren't there. And if that makes you impossible to fully understand, so be it. Better to be misunderstood for your depth than celebrated for your disguise. There will be moments when that depth feels like a curse. When you're surrounded by conversations that never leave the shoreline, and you're drowning in an ocean of thoughts no one else seems to swim in. When your insights, meant to illuminate, are met with blank stares, or worse, hostility. It is in these moments that the temptation to dim yourself creeps in, to speak only what's easy, to laugh at what doesn't move you, to pretend the surface is enough, but you know too much to go back. Once your eyes have adjusted to the deeper layers of reality, the shallow end feels suffocating. You can visit, but you can't live there. And so you make peace with the fact that part of your life will always be lived in a kind of exile, an exile not from people, but from their illusions. Nietzsche warned of this exile when he wrote, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." You hear a rhythm most will never catch. You see the architecture behind the chaos, the threads of cause and effect that tie today's choices to tomorrow's consequences. This sight is both gift and burden. Gift, because it allows you to navigate life with an awareness that saves you from countless traps. Burden, because you cannot unsee the traps that others walk into willingly, smiling as the door shuts behind them. But here's the truth that keeps you from despair. You're not here to drag the unwilling into the deep. You're here to live in such a way that those who are ready will see the possibility of more. You are here to be a lighthouse, not a lifeboat. A lifeboat exhausts itself trying to carry everyone. A lighthouse stands firm, and those who wish to navigate towards safety can do so by its light. This is why your mind is so rare. It is not that you think more, it is that you see differently. You are not hypnotized by the glitter of what everyone else chases. You are not seduced by the safety of sameness. You do not measure your life by how well you've blended in. You measure it by alignment, by how close your actions match your principles, by whether you can look at yourself without flinching, by whether you've lived in truth, even when it cost you more than lies would have. And in the quiet moments, away from the noise, away from the demands, you feel the rare peace of someone who has not betrayed themselves. That peace is worth more than all the applause the world could give you. Because applause fades, truth echoes, and your mind misunderstood, solitary, unyielding, will leave echoes that outlast you. And those echoes will not be soft. They will not be the polite ripples of a life lived according to someone else's script. They will be the kind of waves that disturb the still waters people have mistaken for safety. Because a mind like yours does not pass through the world quietly, it leaves a pressure, a presence, even in silence. People will remember not just what you said, but how they felt in your presence. Some will feel exposed, as though you could see the truths they hide even from themselves. Others will feel ignited, as though something long dormant inside them had been called to life. And here is where the rarest shift happens. You stop needing either reaction. Whether someone resents you for breaking their illusions or thanks you for awakening them, you understand both are simply responses to light. You are not here to control their reaction, you are here to keep the light burning. Jung understood that individuation, the becoming of a whole, integrated self, was not for the faint of heart. It requires the death of the image you've built to please the world and the birth of a self that may never be fully understood by it. And so it is with your mind. Once you step into the full scope of what it can see, you will always be too much for some, too strange for others, and exactly right for only a few. But those few matter, because when two minds like yours meet, the loneliness breaks for a moment. The exile ends. There is no need for masks, for translation, for shrinking your thoughts to fit inside someone else's frame. The conversation leaps, without hesitation, into the places most people are afraid to even approach. And you both leave changed, not because you've agreed on everything, but because you've touched the rare electricity of true recognition. That recognition fuels you when the solitude returns. It reminds you that even if you are part of the 1%, you are not entirely alone. You are part of a scattered constellation, hidden in the noise, shining in the dark. And so you keep walking your path, not because it is easy, not because it is without cost, but because you could never betray what you see. You could never unlearn what you've learned, never unknow what you've uncovered. In the end, the mind 99% will never comprehend is not a gift given for comfort, it is a responsibility. A responsibility to see clearly when it would be easier to look away, to speak when silence would protect you, to walk alone when the crowd is moving the other way. And that responsibility is the price of freedom, a price you've already decided is worth paying. Because for you, the greatest risk was never being misunderstood. It was living a life small enough to be easily understood by everyone. And that is the unshakable truth. You were never built for the small life. You were not designed to fit neatly into the narrow lanes carved by other people's fears. Your mind was not given to you so it could be caged in consensus. It was given so it could roam the unmapped territories, the places where certainty dissolves and only those who can stand in the unknown will survive. This is why you have always felt a certain restlessness, even in moments of success, even when you've achieved what others told you should make you happy. There is an undercurrent, a pull towards something deeper, something unspoken, something that cannot be measured by titles or possessions. The 99% will tell you to silence that pull. They'll call it dissatisfaction, ingratitude, impracticality. They'll warn you about the dangers of leaving the safety of the shore. But you already know the shore is not safety, it is stagnation. Nietzsche wrote, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos is the tension you live with daily, the push and pull between belonging and becoming, between comfort and growth, between the acceptance of the tribe and the call of your own path. Most will choose belonging, even if it means living a life that is not theirs. You will choose becoming, even if it means walking alone. And yes, there will be nights when the solitude feels heavier than the freedom feels sweet. Nights when you wonder if it would have been easier to dim the light just enough to blend in. Nights when the weight of seeing more, feeling more, knowing more presses against your chest. But every time that thought comes, so does the memory of the first time you saw through the illusion, the first time you realized you had been living in a room with locked windows and you smashed the glass to let the air in, the first time you breathed that air and knew with a clarity that could not be unlearned that you would rather face the storms outside than suffocate in safety. That is a moment that keeps you moving forward. That is the reason you can never go back. Because the mind you carry now is not just yours, it is the sum of every hard truth you've faced, every comfortable lie you've burned, every time you've chosen clarity over ease. And so you walk into the world with the quiet conviction of someone who does not need to be understood to know their own worth. You do not demand agreement, only the space to live by your own vision. You do not chase recognition, because you know the rare will recognize you without being told who you are. The 99% may never comprehend your mind, but it was never meant for them. It was meant for the work, for the vision, for the creation only you can bring into being. And when you're gone, it will not be their understanding that keeps your legacy alive. It will be the undeniable imprint you left on the world simply by refusing to think the way they told you to think. And that imprint will not fade quietly. It will linger in the questions you forced people to ask themselves, in the truths you spoke that could not be unsaid, in the cracks you left in the walls of their certainty. Some will try to patch those cracks with the same old lies, but something will have shifted. The illusion will never feel as airtight again. That is the silent power of a mind that refuses to be domesticated. Its influence is not always visible in the moment. Sometimes it takes years for a seed you planted in passing to break the surface. And when it does, the person who now sees differently may not even remember it was you who handed them the seed. But it doesn't matter, because your purpose was never to be credited, it was to make it impossible for them to go back to sleep completely. Jung knew this truth well. The rarest minds do not seek to dominate others, but to liberate them. And liberation always begins in the mind, in the invisible shift from blind acceptance to conscious choice. That shift is contagious, not quickly, not easily, but inevitably. This is why the rarest thinkers have always been both revered and feared. Socrates was poisoned, Galileo was silenced, Bruno was burned not because they were wrong, but because they were right too soon. They saw beyond the horizon before the crowd was ready to follow. And here is the reality you must live with. You will often be too soon for the rooms you walk into. Your words will land like foreign currency valued only by those who know its worth. Your ideas will be called unrealistic until the day they are obvious. Your clarity will be mocked until the moment it becomes undeniable. This is why patience must be your companion, because the mind that 99% of people will never comprehend is also the mind that must learn to endure the weight of being misunderstood without bending to fit the mold. The crowd moves in cycles. You move in spirals. They return to the same points again and again, calling it progress. You ascend, revisiting the same truths from higher ground each time, seeing more with every pass. And while they trade comfort for the illusion of safety, you trade safety for the reality of freedom. It is not an easy trade. It will cost you certainty. It will cost you acceptance. It will cost you the soothing lullaby of everyone else is doing it. But it will give you everything that actually matters. A mind that cannot be bought, a voice that cannot be silenced, and a life that, whether celebrated or condemned, was undeniably your own. And when your time is done, the world may still not fully comprehend your mind, but they will feel its impact. And somewhere, someone will breathe easier, think sharper, and see further, because you existed. And in that final reckoning, you will understand something that will quiet every doubt you've ever carried. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be felt. Felt in the way your presence shifted the air in a room. Felt in the way your words stayed like embers in someone's mind, flaring to life when they needed them most. Felt in the way your choices, defiant, disciplined, unshaken, drew a line in the sand for what it means to live in truth. You will realize that your life was not a straight path, but a series of thresholds you crossed alone, each one taking you further from the comfort of the crowd and deeper into the terrain only a few ever dare to enter. And though you walked it without the certainty of applause, you walked it without regret, because this was never about recognition. It was about alignment. It was about refusing to hand your mind over to the forces that thrive on keeping it small. It was about becoming the kind of person who can stand alone in the storm and still see the horizon clearly. That is the reward, not their understanding, not their approval, but the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you did not dilute yourself to be digestible, that you carried your mind, this rare, unyielding, untamed mind, through a world that tried at every turn to tame it, and you never let it go. And when your last day comes, you will not go out as someone who was easily explained. You will go out as a mystery, as a force, as a presence that could never be fully mapped, but one that left behind a world ever so slightly more awake than it was before you arrived. That is enough. That was always enough.